What's going on, nation? Today we're going to be discussing creatine and hair loss because let's face it, unless you're already rocking the bald look because you like it, nobody wants to have their hair falling out in their mid-20s, and I bet the majority of you didn't even know that creatine could even be linked to hair loss. I will also be covering other topics such as excessive weight gain, kidney stones, cramping, and water retention, for example, in future videos as well. Now, if you guys have missed any of my previous supplement reviews, you can check them out in my nutrition playlist here. And also, if you guys have suggestions for future supplements or products that you would like me to review, leave those suggestions below. And be sure to turn on video notifications so you never miss a new video upload. But before we dive into hair loss, let's quickly talk about what creatine is and how it works, because it's one of the most scientifically proven supplements to help you guys make those massive gains, and you should know why. So what exactly is creatine? Well, creatine was discovered in 1835, and it's a naturally occurring chemical compound found in meat, more specifically in red meat. And it's manufactured in our body from 3 amino acids: glycine, arginine, and methionine. Now, creatine is mostly stored in your skeletal muscle tissue in the form of creatine phosphate, and it's necessary to produce the energy you need for high-intensity weight training. But just to be clear though, guys, high intensity in weightlifting means low reps and heavy weight, and typically a set duration of 10 seconds or less. We're not talking about endurance training here, so keep that in mind. And what creatine does is it helps resynthesize the ATP in our muscles. For those of you who don't know what ATP stands for, it stands for adenosine triphosphate, and it's essentially the power that drives muscular recruitment. What happens is that when a muscle contracts forcefully, so when you're doing weightlifting, ATP molecules are used and split into ADP molecules, yielding the energy necessary for you to lift. So when the ATP is depleted within your muscle cells, they can no longer contract, and that's where supplementing with creatine comes into play. This is because it bonds with ADP molecules, turning it back into ATP, therefore increasing the muscle's capacity of executing intense work during training. But if all of this is a bit too scientific for you, just remember that creatine is used to create more energy inside your muscles, allowing you to perform more reps, lift heavier weights, and train with an overall higher intensity. Now let's talk about the benefits of creatine, how to properly take creatine, and if I'm supplementing with it, I prefer a good creatine monohydrate. In short, the major benefits of supplementing with creatine monohydrate are: number 1, improving your high-intensity anaerobic workouts; number 2, decreasing your muscle recovery period, so recovering faster; and number 3, increased brain function and better bone health. And I know some of you guys might still be skeptical, but after searching through loads and loads of studies, it's absolutely certain that all these benefits hold true. In fact, I'll even link to some of the studies down in the info section below in case you guys want to check them out. But to get all these benefits from creatine, you will have to supplement with it. Getting it from your food is just not enough. For example, 2 pounds of red meat contains approximately 1 gram of creatine. So to take 3 to 5 grams of creatine, which is the recommended amount, you'd have to ingest 10 pounds of meat or more, which probably isn't too meal plan friendly, right? But this does lead me into my next point, which is how to take creatine, when to take it, how much you should take, and whether or not you need to cycle it. So how much should you be taking? Well, depending on your weight and more specifically your muscle mass, 3 to 7 grams of creatine per day is optimal. Basically, if you're on the low side of the scale, go for 3 to 4 grams. But if you're like a 200-pound monster, go ahead and take close to 7 grams per day to make sure you're keeping your muscle cells saturated with creatine. As for timing, creatine does not have an acute effect. It's not like you're going to take a scoop of creatine and be like, I feel the power, and start like going nuts. It doesn't work like that. It actually takes about 14 days to slowly build up in your system, and after that, your muscles become saturated with it, so you only have to maintain those creatine levels by having 3 to 7 grams every single day. Therefore, since it only has a long-term effect, you do not have to take it before or after your workouts. It's just a myth, guys. You can take it whenever you want, early in the morning or even before bed. And now the big question, do you need to load on creatine? And the answer is absolutely not. As mentioned before, 14 days is all it takes to get built up in your system if you just have 3 to 7 grams per day. And that leads us into our next question of, do you even need to cycle creatine? And again, absolutely not. There's no significant evidence which shows that cycling creatine is better than taking it continuously, or that continuous use has any negative effects. And can you guys take creatine when cutting? That comes up a lot as well, and I see that a lot in the comment sections of my videos, and the answer is yes. People are often afraid creatine might impede their ability to lose weight because creatine is supposed to make you retain a lot of water, which just isn't true. If anything, creatine will help you with your cutting because it's going to help you keep your strength and muscle mass, which is a difficult feat for those of you currently in the cutting process. Personally, I like using BSN's DNA series creatine monohydrate, and some of you guys might say that I'm not objective about this since I am sponsored by BSN and I've been a BSN athlete for 7 years now, but at the end of the day, I'm with BSN because I believe in their products, and you guys know me. I'm not going to bullshit you and tell you I use things that I don't, and if I tell you I'm using something and I like it, it's because I actually do use it and I do like it. And this creatine in particular is 100% creatine monohydrate, and it's micronized, which is a fancy way to say that it easily dissolves in water. And 1 scoop of this is about 3 grams of creatine, so I take 1 to 2 scoops every day. So now that you understand everything you need to know about supplementing with creatine and how to take it, from now on, when I make future videos talking about specific side effects, I will just link back to this video so don't have to repeat everything again. And with that being said, it's time to talk about hair loss. And by the way, did you guys see my amazing thumbnail image? Looks like I could give The Rock a run for his money, right? What do you think, babe? I'm going to shave it all off tonight?
Yeah, you look badass.
Yeah, be like, I would probably look like 10 pounds bigger if I shaved my head. Make my traps look huge.
Yeah, that's why you want to do it.
But seriously, guys, let's talk about how creatine has been linked to hair loss, because a lot of people are questioning whether or not this is true or just a myth. There have been testimonies of males that swear that creatine is causing their hair to thin out or fall out altogether, and I wanted to take some time to clarify this. So first, let's talk about how males lose their hair. Male pattern baldness happens on males who are sensitive to DHT, which is a hormone called dihydrotestosterone. And your body converts testosterone to DHT, and DHT is actually 5 times more powerful than testosterone. In fact, men with male pattern baldness have been shown to have higher levels of DHT in their scalp, and DHT is thought to attach to the receptors on hair follicles and trigger them to shrink, causing your hair to thin out and eventually fall out. And that was a mouthful. So what's the connection? Well, there is evidence suggesting that creatine can increase your levels of DHT, which could be causing hair loss in men. In fact, there was a study done on 20 rugby players that proved the correlation between creatine and the rise in DHT levels. In this study, 10 players were given a placebo, and the other 10 received elevated levels of creatine for 3 weeks. In week 1, they took 25 grams a day, and then for the following 2 weeks, they took 5 grams per day. And the group that supplemented with creatine showed an increase of 56% of DHT levels after the first week. On the following 2 weeks, when the doses were reduced down to 5 grams per day, DHT levels reduced to 40%. So based on this study, you can make the conclusion that creatine does increase DHT levels, which can lead to hair loss. But before you guys all start throwing your bottles of creatine in the trash for fear of being bald, let me make a few more points. Number 1, this is the only study I could find on the topic, and it was only done with 20 people. Now, this doesn't mean the study was bad, it just means we don't have other studies to compare it to, and drawing a big conclusion like this one from only one study is questionable at best. Number 2, an increase in DHT levels will only cause baldness if you are genetically prone to it. Male pattern baldness is genetic, guys, which means it doesn't happen to everyone. And how do you know if you're on the DHT sensitive group? Well, the suspect gene variation that causes this sits on the X chromosome, which is handed down to men by their mother. This means that baldness comes from your mom's side of the family, so it might be a good time to go visit mom and have her bust out the old family album to make sure your uncles and grandpa have a full head of hair. If they do, chances are you're okay. Now, if there are cases of baldness in your mom's side of the family, that's a sign that you might be sensitive to DHT. Number 3, looking back at the study on the rugby players, you will notice that the drastic increase in DHT happened during the saturation phase when the players were taking 25 grams of creatine a day. And you should all know by now that the need for saturation or loading when taking creatine is a myth. And if you want to be safe, just stick with the lower doses of up to 5 to 7 grams per day. And number 4, if you've been taking creatine for a while now and haven't noticed any thinning of the hair or hair loss, then chances are you're probably okay. And at the end of the day, if you prefer the bald, badass look, then who cares, right? So to summarize, guys, if you're not the high-risk group, you should be fine. Now, I would also like to know that there are a certain number of people, which is less than like 10%, who are just non-responders when it comes to creatine. If that's you, you won't notice any effects after supplementing with creatine for a few months, so therefore there really is no reason for you to spend your hard-earned money on it. For the majority of people, I believe creatine monohydrate is an excellent supplement to have as long as your meal plan is in order. Remember guys, a supplement is used to supplement your already existing meal plan. Otherwise, you're just wasting your money. And I hope you've learned something from this video. And if you have any questions about creatine, or if you have any suggestions about supplements I should cover in future videos, be sure to leave those comments down in the comment section below. And as always, more good stuff coming soon. See you guys.